There are mysteries that begin with a bang, a gunshot, a scream, an explosion. And then there are mysteries that begin with silence, a silence so heavy, so unnatural, that it screams louder than any siren. Imagine you are a police officer in the quiet, rolling hills of Victoria, Australia. It is a Tuesday afternoon, August 30, 2016. You are called to a prosperous berry farm in the town of Silvan. The neighbors are worried. They haven't seen the family who runs it, the Tromps, for over 24 hours. The gate is unlocked. The house is unlocked. You walk inside. It looks like the people who lived there simply evaporated mid-sentence. There is food on the counter. There are half-finished coffees. Passports, credit cards, and mobile phones are lying on the table, abandoned. But then you walk into the home office. And you see it. The floor is covered in piles of paperwork, financial documents, deeds, bank statements. And splattered across the papers is a red liquid. It looks like blood. It trails out the door. Your hand goes to your holster. You follow the trail. You fear the worst. You fear a massacre. But when you test the liquid, you realize it isn't blood. It's red berry juice. Someone has frantically crushed berries into the floor, or maybe they dropped them in a panic. The car is gone. The family of 5, a father, a mother, and 3 adult children, has vanished. They haven't been kidnapped. They haven't been murdered. They have fled. But they aren't running from criminals. They aren't running from the police. They aren't running from debt collectors. They are running from something that doesn't exist. They have thrown their phones out the car windows because they believe the technology is tracking them. They are driving hundreds of miles into the interior of Australia, fueled by a collective delusion that someone is out to kill them. And before this road trip is over, this tight-knit, loving family will be scattered across 2 states. One found catatonic under a motel bed, one found wandering a highway in a daze, and one found driving a stolen car with no memory of who she is. This is the story of the Tromp family. It is the most baffling case of shared psychosis in modern history. It is a story that forces us to ask, how does a completely normal, successful, happy family lose its collective mind in a single afternoon? If you are fascinated by the fragility of the human psyche and the terrifying power of paranoia, please hit that subscribe ** button right now. You need to hear this story, because it proves that the most dangerous place in the world isn't a dark alley. It is the space between your own ears. To understand the unraveling, we first have to look at the fabric. If you were to look up stable family in the dictionary, you would find a picture of the Tromps. Mark Tromp, 51, was a hardworking, innovative farmer. He ran a successful redcurrant and gooseberry farm. He was known as a practical, earthy man. Jacoba Tromp, 53, his wife, was the backbone of the business and the family. They had 3 adult children who lived at home and worked on the farm. Riana, 29, Mitchell, 25, and Ella, 22. They were successful. They were wealthy. They had no history of mental illness. They had no drug problems. They were well-liked in the community. The farm was their life. They worked 7 days a week. They were a team. But in the weeks leading up to August 2016, something shifted. The pressure of running the farm was intense, but they had handled it for decades. This was different. Mark, the father, began to exhibit signs of stress, but not normal stress. He started talking about people watching them. He became convinced that someone was out to steal their farm. He believed their bank accounts were being hacked. He believed their phones were tapped. Now, in a normal family, if the father starts acting paranoid, the rest of the family usually steps in. They say, "Dad, you need to sleep. Dad, you need to see a doctor." But the Tromps were so close, so insular, that they didn't question him. Instead, they caught it. Like a virus, the fear jumped from Mark to Jacoba. Then it jumped to the kids. It is a phenomenon psychiatrists call *Folie, madness of two. In this case, it was Folie a familial *, madness of a family. By Monday, August 29, the entire household was vibrating with a shared, unspoken terror. They weren't just worried, they were hunted. Monday morning, the paranoia reached a boiling point. Mark became convinced that they were coming for them today. He told the family, "We have to leave now." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe, north." There was no plan, no destination, just the urge to run. But here is where the behavior moves from strange to irrational. If you are running from danger, you take your phone to call for help. You take your credit cards to pay for hotels. You take your passports in case you need to leave the country. The Tromps did the opposite. Mark believed that technology was the enemy. He believed their phones were beacons that would lead the bad guys right to them. So he gave an order: leave your phones, leave your wallets, leave your passports, leave your computers. The family obeyed. They left everything on the kitchen table. Mitchell, the only one who hesitated, snuck his cell phone into his pocket. He couldn't quite let go of the lifeline. But the others walked out with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a large amount of cash Mark kept in the house. They piled into Ella's silver Peugeot SUV. Mark drove. Jacoba sat next to him. The three kids squeezed into the back. It was a tight squeeze. Tension was high. Mark started driving north, away from Silvan, away from the farm. As they drove, the atmosphere in the car became suffocating. Every car behind them was following them. Every person they passed was watching them. Mitchell, sitting in the back, felt the phone in his pocket burning a hole in his leg. About 30 kilometers into the trip, Mark sensed something. He turned to Mitchell. "Do you have your phone?" Mitchell admitted he did. Mark demanded he throw it out the window. Mitchell, swept up in the hysteria, rolled down the window and threw his iPhone onto the highway. Now they were truly ghosts. No GPS, no communication, just 5 terrified people in a silver metal box hurtling toward the unknown. They drove all day. They drove into the night. They crossed the border into New South Wales. The conversation in the car was bizarre. They weren't talking about where they were going. They were feeding each other's delusions. "Did you see that truck?" "Yes, it's the same one from an hour ago." "They know where we are." Mark was driving erratically. He was taking back roads to shake the tail. Jacoba was staring out the window, terrified. Riana, usually the quiet one, was becoming catatonic. By Tuesday morning, they had driven nearly 800 kilometers, 500 miles. They reached the Genelan Caves, a popular tourist spot in the Blue Mountains. But they weren't tourists. They didn't look at the caves. They sat in the car. The isolation was starting to crack the group dynamic. Mitchell, the 25-year-old son, was the first to wake up from the trance. He looked around at his exhausted parents and his terrified sisters. He thought, "This is insane. Why are we here? Nobody is following us." He tried to reason with Mark. "Dad, we need to stop. We need to go back." But Mark was too far gone. We can't go back, it's not safe. The argument escalated. Mitchell made a decision. I'm leaving, he said. He opened the car door. It was a shocking move. The family unit was their shield. By leaving, he was exposing himself to the danger. But Mitchell didn't care. He got out of the car at Bathurst. He walked to the train station. It was the first crack in the delusion. The Tromp family was now 4. You would think Mitchell leaving would act as a wake-up call. Instead, it sent the remaining family members deeper into the spiral. Mark felt betrayed. He felt vulnerable. He drove harder. They reached the town of Galburn. The daughters, Riana and Ella, were exhausted. They, too, started to realize that this road trip had no end. They decided they couldn't stay in the car with their father anymore. His energy was too intense, too manic. They told him they wanted to get out. Mark refused to stop at first, but eventually he pulled over at a gas station. Riana and Ella got out. But they didn't walk to a train station like Mitchell. They did something completely out of character. They saw a car, a gray BMW. The owner had left it unlocked with the keys in it. This is rural Australia, after all. Riana and Ella stole the car. These were 2 well-behaved, law-abiding farm girls. They had never stolen a candy bar, let alone a vehicle. But in their paranoid state, they believed they needed to escape. They believed their lives depended on it. They jumped in the BMW and sped off in the opposite direction. Now the family was shattered. Mitchell was on a train. The girls were in a stolen car. And Mark and Jacoba, the parents, were alone in the Peugeot, driving deeper into the madness. Mark and Jacoba continued driving. But without the children to protect, the dynamic shifted again. Jacoba was becoming increasingly unwell. The stress was taking a physical toll. Mark, realizing his wife was deteriorating, decided to stop. They were in the town of Wangaratta. Mark stopped the car. For reasons that are still unclear, they separated. Some reports say Mark got out to check something and Jacoba drove off. Others say they agreed to split up to confuse the pursuers. Either way, Jacoba Tromp, a woman who rarely drove long distances and relied heavily on her husband, was now alone behind the wheel of the Peugeot. And Mark Tromp was on foot in a strange town. Wednesday, August 31. The world started to find the Tromps, but the way they were found was more disturbing than their disappearance. Discovery 1, Mitchell *. Mitchell arrived home in Silvan via train. He walked into the empty house. He saw the red berry juice on the floor. He saw the chaos. He realized how bad it looked. He called the media. He stood in front of the cameras, shaking, pleading for his family to come home. They're not crazy, he told reporters. They're just stressed. Please, if you see them, help them. Discovery 2, the stolen BMW. Police found the stolen gray BMW in Galburn. But the girls weren't in it. Ella, the youngest, had arrived at a police station. She was confused, distressed, but physically okay. She told the police she had split up with her sister because Riana was driving dangerously and acting strange. But where was Riana? Discovery 3, Riana. This is the most haunting image of the entire saga. A local man in Galburn felt a bump in the back of his utility truck, Ute. He stopped, he looked in the tray. He found a woman. It was Riana Tromp. She was huddled in the fetal position. She was catatonic. She didn't know her name. She didn't know where she was. She looked at the man with eyes wide with terror, but she couldn't speak. She had climbed into the back of a stranger's truck to hide. She was taken to the Galburn hospital. The doctors described her state as psychotic. She was treated for acute mental distress. It took days for her to remember who she was. Discovery 4, Mark asterisk. While the girls were being found, a massive manhunt was underway for Mark. Police found the Peugeot abandoned in Wangaratta. But Mark was gone. Eyewitnesses reported seeing a man matching his description running across roads, hiding in bushes, and looking behind him constantly. He was playing a real-life game of hide-and-seek with phantom enemies. On Saturday, September 3, 5 days after they left, Mark Tromp was found. He was walking by the side of a road near the Wangaratta airport. He was disheveled, he was dehydrated. When the police approached him, he didn't run. He just stopped. The spell broke. He looked at the officers. He asked about his family. He apologized. He was taken to the hospital for a mental health assessment. Discovery 5, Jacoba. But where was the mother? Jacoba was the last to be found. On Thursday, a member of the public in Yass, a town 500 kilometers from their home, saw a woman wandering the streets. She looked lost. She was wearing clothes that didn't match the weather. She walked into a motel. She didn't check in. She walked into an unlocked room. When the cleaners came in later, they felt something blocked the bed. They looked underneath. They found Jacoba Tromp curled up under the bed frame, hiding. She was taken to the hospital. She, too, was diagnosed with acute stress-induced psychosis. Within a week, all 5 members of the Tromp family were alive. Physically, they were fine. Mentally, they were recovering from a war that never happened. The police searched the farm, they searched the accounts, they searched the red juice stains. They found nothing. There was no cult. There was no mafia. There was no debt. The farm was financially healthy. There were no drugs. Toxicology reports for all 5 came back clean. No meth, no hallucinogens, no poisons. There was a theory about plant toxins. Maybe they ate a poisonous berry or were exposed to pesticides. But this was ruled out. The shared nature of the delusion pointed to psychology, not chemistry. Mitchell and Ella faced the media again. They stood by their parents. They explained the inexplicable. It was a buildup of pressure, Mitchell said. Dad was stressed. Mom was stressed. We just fed off each other. They described it as a domino effect. Once the first domino, Mark, fell, the others fell in rapid succession because their bond was so tight. Because they loved and trusted their father implicitly, his fear became their reality. If Dad says we are in danger, we asterisk our asterisk in danger. The Tromp case is now a textbook example of folie à famille. It requires 2 things. 1, a dominant figure, the inducer, in this case Mark, the person who originates the delusion. 2, suggestible followers, the induced, the rest of the family. Usually, this happens in cults or families that are isolated from society, like the Wolfpack brothers. But the Tromps weren't isolated. They ran a business. They talked to customers. What makes this case so terrifying is how quickly it happened. It didn't take years of brainwashing. It took a few days of intense stress. It shows that the barrier between sanity and insanity is much thinner than we like to think. Under the right amount of pressure, the human brain seeks patterns. Paranoia is just a pattern gone wrong. It is the brain trying to make sense of anxiety by creating a villain. Mark Tromp issued a public apology. "I am sorry for the hurt and concern I caused," he said. "I was not well." The charges for the stolen car were dropped against Riana and Ella under the Mental Health Act. The police closed the file. There was no crime, just a tragedy of the mind. But for us, the audience, the questions linger. Why that asterisk day? Why did they flee north? And the tech-free aspect haunts us. In 2016, we were already addicted to our phones. The act of throwing the phones out the window is symbolic. It represents a total rejection of the modern world. Mark Tromp believed the technology was watching him. And in a way, he was right. CCTV cameras tracked their car. Cell phone towers pinged Mitchell's phone before he tossed it. The modern world is asterisk a surveillance state. Mark's paranoia was an exaggeration of a very real truth. Maybe that's why this story resonates. We all feel that low-level anxiety that our devices are listening. The Tromps just turned the volume of that anxiety up to 100. The most incredible part of this story is the ending. The Tromps went back to the farm. They cleaned up the red berry juice. They sorted the papers. They went back to work. They are still there today. They sell their berries. They go to the market. If you met them, you would never know that for 5 days in 2016, they were the most famous fugitives in the world. They managed to glue the pieces of their minds back together. But one has to wonder, when the phone rings late at night, or when a strange car pulls into the driveway, do they look at each other? Does that electric current of fear pass between them again? Or have they built a firewall against their own shared nightmare? The mystery of the Tromp family isn't about what happened to them. We know what happened. The mystery is us asterisk. It's a mirror. It shows us that sanity is not a fixed state. It is a group agreement. We agree on what is real. But if the people you trust most in the world, your father, your mother, your siblings, suddenly agree on an asterisk different reality, how long would it take for you to join them? How long before you, too, are throwing your phone out the window and hiding under a motel bed? The Tromps proved that love is powerful. It's powerful enough to build a life. And it's powerful enough to destroy one. This story is fundamentally terrifying because there was no bad guy. The villain was their own love for each other. Do you think you could be induced into a delusion by someone you trust? Or would you be the Mitchell who gets off the train? Be honest. Let me know in the comments below. If you are captivated by the mysteries of the human mind, please hit that asterisk like asterisk button. And subscribe asterisk. I have a story coming next week about a lighthouse in Scotland where 3 keepers vanished into thin air, leaving a meal untouched on the table. Stay safe, keep your phone close, or don't, and always trust your gut over your fear.